and they let you look at things from a top-down view.
Now, do you ever think, Joe, that when you're in that state, that prior civilizations, if we think of them as advanced civilizations like the ancient Egyptians or somebody like that they somehow were able to live in that world or at least in a more time per day?
Oh, there's clear evidence.
There's
clear
today?
evidence that that's the case. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it with Graham Hancock the other day on the podcast, and he was talking about the Blue Lotus. And the Blue Lotus is documented that the ancient Egyptians used this particular psychedelic. There's much evidence that the ancient Greeks, in fact, Brian Murarescu, who's been on the podcast before, wrote a book called The Immortality Key. It's a great book about how these ancient societies and the Eleusinian mysteries, they drank wine that was laced with psychedelics. And this has all been proven now because they found the vessels of these wine and they tested positive for ergot. And so they didn't just, when we think of wine, we think of just alcohol. But no, this wine actually had psychedelics mixed in. And if you think about it, like from that Enlightenment period, this is the birth of democracy. This is the birth of modern civilization as we know it. It came from these wise people getting together and having these rituals. And that this has now opened up a field of study at Harvard because of his book and because of the success of the book and his discussions of it. It's really amazing stuff. But it points to that people throughout human history, in order to gain great insight and wisdom, have turned to these what they call plant medicines.
You know, in my Greek books, of course, you read about and research the Eleusinian mysteries.
Yeah.
And it's so... I mean, maybe you know more about. I think they were so secret that it's not like there's any book that you can read.
Right.
That what they did. Who knows what they did?
Well, because it was all squashed by the Romans. You know, they squashed all that, and they wound up moving to other countries in Europe. There's great evidence that they moved out of Greece, they moved into Spain, and that they had these rituals in other countries as well. And so they've found these similar type of reliefs and similar pottery, and inside the vessels they've also found this ergot and wine and various psychedelics that were, you know, there's trace residue of them. So
have you studied the Hermetics at all?
No.
Are you interested in?
Yes.
Have you heard about them at all?
Sure.
This thing?
Please.
Have you heard of a book called The Kabbalion?
No.
Well, this should be right up your street. The Hermetics were Egyptians. It's where the Freemasons came from, and the alchemists and the people in the Middle Ages who preserved, you know, the culture when the Dark Ages came. And the Hermetics comes from Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes thrice great, who was supposedly the wisest man or avatar or god from the Egyptian period. And the Kabbalion was their book. I don't know if the actual Kabbalion still exists. There are I have like one little short book of it, but they had a whole deep philosophy that is a lot like this. You want me to talk about this for a second?
Sure, yeah, please.
I mean, there were I think the Hermetics had like 7 principles. I'll see if I can remember what they are. The first one is that you and I have no physical existence as entities. We exist entirely as thoughts in the mind of the all, or God. Sort of like the analogy they use is like in the mind of Dickens is Mr. Micawber and Pip and David Copperfield and all that. And that you and I only exist as thoughts in the mind of God. And they believed that the universe was entirely mental. That's what this was. That there really is no physical existence. And that it was all vibrational. And that one of the things they believed was that there's no such thing as opposites. Heat and cold are not opposites. Fear and courage are not opposites. They are just points on a continuum. And that the difference between fear and courage is entirely in the vibration. And so this is where the alchemy came in. They believed that if they could change their vibration or change the vibration of lead, that they could change it into gold. And they had the other things was, everything vibrates. The other thing was that everything swings on a pendulum. Everything goes back and forth from one thing to another. And they also believe that everything is male and female, that everything is created comes from the union of male and female in the highest levels. Anyway, it's great shit. And, at one point, apparently, in ancient Egypt or before that, this was, this was what they believed, and it somehow got wiped out. Or just held on in various little pockets of the occult knowledge and stuff like that. So it's the ancient Hermetics, and the book is the Kybalion, Kybalion.
I think there are
fascinating shit.
I think there are many cultures that were tapping into this at some point in time.
Even Joe Dispenza that I was talking about before, what he talks about is when you get to that state of no mind, no thing, no presence, that the only thing that exists is vibration and consciousness. And that would be straight out of Hermetic philosophy.
Yeah, those reoccurring themes, they exist in so many cultures.
Yeah.